The night had settled over the small Ohio house with a kind of silence that felt wrong. A silence that didn't rest, but waited. The kitchen light glowed dimly, spreading a pale gold haze across the cabinets, the floor, and the thin, trembling figure of Margaret Ward. At 74, Margaret moved like someone whose bones carried more story than strength. Her silver hair sat in a low, soft bun. A few strands fell forward each time she leaned, and tonight she leaned a little too far. She washed the last glass from dinner. Her fingers, stiff from age and cold, slipped. The glass fell. Chuk! A small burst of glittering shards scattered across the tiles. Margaret froze. Oh, Lord. Not again. She bent down slowly, painfully, to gather the pieces. But before her hand could touch the floor, footsteps thundered down the stairs. Hard, sharp, fast. Cassandra Miller appeared in the doorway. Tall, slender, polished to perfection in a cream-colored turtleneck and black-fitted slacks. Her ash-blonde hair was straight and flawless. Her icy blue eyes were narrowed, like the world itself had disappointed her one more time. Seriously? Her voice sliced the room. Every time I turn around, you're breaking something. Margaret raised her hands, shaking. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... Cassandra lunged. She seized Margaret's wrist, hard, fingers digging into the thin, paper-like skin. You always have excuses. She yanked the older woman upward. Margaret stumbled. Her shoulder hit the wooden cabinet with a sickening crack. A cry escaped her lips. Soft, swallowed, the kind of sound that hurts just to hear. Pain tore through her left shoulder. Her breath came shallow. Her heartbeat fluttered too fast. Cassandra didn't stop. She twisted the wrist in her grip. Shards on the floor cut into Margaret's palm as she tried to steady herself. Blood dotted the floor, small crimson beads on cold tile. Cassandra's voice hardened. Tomorrow, you're going to a nursing home. Her eyes drifted downward, landing on the dog. And if you tell Daniel anything, the dog goes first. Oliver had been lying on his blanket near the door. At 12 years old, the golden retriever had slowed, his golden coat faded, his muzzle gray. But at Cassandra's threat, he rose, slowly, stiffly, then fully, standing between Margaret and danger. A low rumble grew inside his chest. A warning. A promise. Cassandra stepped back, irritated. Get that thing away from me. She kicked the edge of his blanket, sending it sliding. Oliver stumbled but held his ground. He planted himself in front of Margaret. Margaret whispered through the pain. Leave him. Please. He's just scared. Cassandra shot her a cold, venomous look. He should be. She grabbed a towel from the counter and tossed it at Margaret's feet. Clean this up. That's all you're good for. Margaret tried to bend. But pain ripped through her shoulder again, sharp and electric. She gasped, her heart hammered, her vision blurred. Oliver nudged her leg gently, whimpering. Margaret whispered, voice trembling. Being old isn't what hurts. It's feeling like you don't belong in your own home. For one fleeting second, Cassandra's face twitched. A flinch, a crack, a memory. Then she turned away. Save your drama. Her footsteps disappeared upstairs. Another door slammed. Silence returned. But it wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating. Margaret sagged against the cabinet, breath unsteady, shoulder throbbing. Oliver circled her, whining softly. Her hand trembled as she tried to gather a shard of glass, blood mixed with the gleam of the tile. She whispered, Lord, please, don't let this be how it ends. Her chest tightened. Her vision shook. Oliver suddenly froze. His ears perked. His eyes widened. He stared at the front door, as if he heard something beyond the walls. A call, a pull, a direction. Then Oliver barked. Not his usual old dog bark, a sharp, urgent sound, a sound that meant danger or destiny. He looked at Margaret, looked at the door, back at her. His eyes said it clearly, "I have to go." Margaret whispered, breath shivering, "Oliver, what is it?" He barked again, louder, then turned and ran. He sprinted toward the dog flap, pushing through with a force that surprised even his own aging body. Cold wind burst into the kitchen. Snow swirled inside for a moment. Then he was gone. Into the storm, into the night, into the only chance Margaret had left. Margaret reached out a weak hand after him. "Come back, please." But the storm swallowed her words. The house felt suddenly larger, colder, a hollow shell of what once was home. Margaret slid to the floor, clutching her shoulder. Pain radiated down her arm. Her breathing quickened. Her heart fluttered like a bird trapped in a cage. She prayed again, not loudly, not desperately, but with the quiet surrender of someone who knows her life is not in her own hands. "Lord, bring my boy home." The kitchen lights flickered as the wind howled, almost as if carrying her prayer into the storm. Snow piled against the back door. Glass glimmered like fallen stars across the tiles. Margaret leaned her head back, eyes wet, voice thin as thread. "I don't belong here anymore, but I wish I did." She felt something warm against her ankle. Memory, not presence. The ghost of Oliver's fur. His comfort. His loyalty. She smiled through tears. "Find him, sweetheart." Outside, far away, a dog barked into the storm. And the world shifted just a little, toward whatever miracle waited next. The night swallowed the house again, deep and absolute. And the kitchen went silent. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform, because sometimes God sends angels in fur, and miracles begin with love. The storm had already swallowed the whole town by the time Oliver reached the street. Snow hammered down in thick, furious waves, turning streetlights into blurred halos and the quiet Ohio neighborhood into a roaring, white wilderness. Oliver pushed forward anyway. Each step was heavy, uneven, painful. At 12 years old, his hips ached in the cold. His paws stung on the frozen pavement. His breath came in hard, misty bursts. But fear drove him. Fear wrapped inside devotion. Fear fueled by love, the kind only an old dog carries. His golden coat, now faded and gray around the muzzle, caught clumps of snow until he looked like a ghost running through the storm. Cars crawled by, headlights dimmed by the blizzard. One swerved too close when Oliver slipped on the road. The brakes screeched. A horn blared. Oliver didn't stop. Something primal pulled him forward, an instinct, a purpose, a prayer made of panic. He crossed Maple Street, tail low, eyes burning with urgency. A pickup truck slowed beside him. Inside sat an elderly man in his late 60s, a round, weathered face framed by thick, white eyebrows and a heavy brown winter jacket. The man leaned out the window, snow whipping around his beard. "Hey, boy, you all right?" He shouted over the wind. He saw the dark stains on Oliver's fur. Margaret's blood. His eyes widened. "Hey, hold on. Let me help you." The man swung the door open. Oliver hesitated, panting, shaking. But the moment the man reached out, Oliver jerked backward and sprinted away, slipping once, but never stopping. "Hey, somebody call 911, the man yelled. But Oliver was already gone. A shadow swallowed by the storm. He ran until his body trembled, until every breath felt like fire, until the snow clung to his eyelashes and his ears lay flat against the cold. Then, through the chaos of white, he saw it. The tall metal fence, the red emergency lights, the city utility building where Daniel worked the night shift. Oliver staggered toward it. At the gate, his front legs buckled. His chest hit the snow. But he wasn't done. He pushed himself up again, limping, dragging his tired body to the side door. The one Daniel always used. He reached it just as it swung open. Daniel Ward stepped into the storm, pulling his navy blue work jacket tight. At 43, Daniel carried the rugged look of a man who'd spent years in the cold. Short, dark hair dusted with snow, a faint stubble shadowing his jaw, and gray-blue eyes, sharp with focus and heavy with responsibility. He held a toolbox in one hand. Then he saw Oliver collapse at his feet. "Oliver?" Daniel's voice cracked. The old dog lifted his head weakly. His chest heaved. Snowflakes clung to his graying muzzle. Daniel knelt instantly. "Oh, God. What happened to you?" His hand swept through the fur and stopped when he felt the dried blood. "This isn't yours, is it?" Oliver whimpered. He pressed his muzzle against Daniel's chest, pushing, insisting. The message was clear. Something had happened. To Margaret. Daniel didn't need more. He scooped Oliver into his arms, despite the dog's weight and Daniel's own shaking breath, and shoved the door open with his shoulder. Inside the warm hallway, Oliver fought to lift himself as if saying, "Go. Now." Daniel wrapped him in a thermal blanket, grabbed his keys, and ran back into the storm. The drive home was pure terror. Ice on the road, wind slamming the windshield, snow blurring everything into white noise. Daniel's fists clenched the steering wheel until his knuckles went pale. His breath shook with every exhale. His mind spiraled. His mother's tired smile, her soft voice, the way she said "good night" just hours ago. He pushed the car faster. "Hold on, Mom, please." He skidded into the driveway. The house was dark, too dark. The porch light flickered weakly, barely cutting through the snow. Daniel lifted Oliver, ran through the yard, and shoved the front door open. It wasn't locked. His stomach dropped. The kitchen met him in a single, horrifying glance. Broken glass? Blood smeared near the sink. A gray cardigan sleeve hanging off a chair, ripped. The wooden cabinet with a fresh dent in it. The towel on the floor, crumpled, wet, thrown. "Mom?" His voice echoed. Nothing. He stepped forward carefully, his boots crunching over glass. Oliver limped behind him, nose low, sniffing deeply. The house felt wrong. Silence with an edge. A silence that held its breath. Oliver paused at the hallway. Then he limped toward the bathroom door. He stopped, looked up at Daniel. His eyes said everything. "She's here." Daniel reached for the doorknob. It was cold. Too cold. He pushed it open slowly. The hinges groaned. A faint breath escaped through the crack, not normal breathing, short, shallow, frightening. Oliver's ears shot up. Daniel froze. The house felt like it exhaled a warning. A cold wind rushing past him from a room that should have been warm. He saw a shadow on the floor. Still. Small. Slumped against the bathtub. His heart slammed inside his ribs. "Mom?" He shoved the door open. Margaret sat on the tile, her back tilted painfully, her left shoulder swollen beneath her cardigan, her right hand stained with dried blood. Her glasses hung crooked, one lens cracked. Her breath came in thin, trembling gasps. Her eyes fluttered open. "Danny?" Daniel dropped to his knees. Terror cracked through his voice. "Mom, Mom, answer me. If this chapter touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform. Because sometimes God sends his angels through storms, and miracles begin in the darkest nights." Daniel dropped to the floor beside his mother, his breath catching as he slid an arm beneath her back. Margaret felt impossibly light, like a bundle of fragile bones wrapped in a faded cardigan. Her skin, pale from shock, looked almost translucent under the cold bathroom light. Her glasses were crooked, one lens cracked. When he shifted her gently, her face tightened with pain. "Easy, Mom. I've got you," he whispered. A soft gasp escaped her lips as Daniel adjusted her injured shoulder. Beneath the cardigan, the swelling had worsened, purple and bluish-black spreading down her arm. The hand that rested limply on her lap was streaked with dried blood. Her breathing came in short, uneven pulls. Yet when she spoke, her voice, weak, trembling, still held that same soft kindness he'd known all his life. "I slipped, Danny. It's my fault. Don't be angry at her." Daniel froze. Her fault? He looked at her carefully, studying her face. Her eyes wouldn't meet his. She stared at the tiles instead, tears gathering in the corners of her lashes. She was trying to protect someone, and he knew exactly who. Oliver limped to her side, lowering his head against her knee. His warm amber eyes stared up at Daniel, not pleading, not panicked, but telling him something important. The dog's posture stiffened when he heard a soft creak from upstairs. Cassandra. The old dog shuffled 2 steps forward, placing himself fully in front of Margaret, his tail stiff, his body tense. Even injured and exhausted, he guarded her like a shield. Daniel looked toward the hallway, jaw tightening, breath held, just as the footsteps grew louder. Cassandra appeared at the top of the stairs, framed by the dim hallway light. She wore a cream-colored sweater and black slacks, still immaculate despite the chaos around them. Her ash-blonde hair fell perfectly to her shoulders, not a single strand out of place. Only her expression broke the illusion of calm. "Oh my God," she cried, feigning shock. "What happened? Is she okay?" Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't. Those cold blue eyes, too steady, too calculating, revealed nothing of fear, only annoyance. She clutched the railing dramatically, as if she might faint, but Daniel saw the flicker of impatience beneath her act. "Danny, I just came down to check." "Stay there," Daniel said sharply. His tone, low, icy, stopped Cassandra mid-step. Oliver growled softly, confirming what Daniel already sensed. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He turned back to his mother, brushing a thumb gently over the bruises on her wrist. The marks were too distinct, too specific. A handprint, 5 fingers, dark, deep. "Mom, these aren't from a fall." Margaret squeezed her eyes shut, tears slipping free. "Danny, please, don't blame her. She's hurting too. She didn't mean..." Daniel swallowed hard, his voice lowered. "She didn't mean to break you?" Margaret flinched, not from pain, but from shame. Shame she didn't deserve. "Mom, look at me." Slowly, reluctantly, she did. "My God," Daniel whispered. "Someone hurt you. I see it." Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. Daniel carried her carefully into the living room and set her on the couch, layering blankets around her thin frame. The warmth helped, but only slightly. Oliver lay pressed against her legs, his old chest rising and falling protectively. Cassandra hovered near the staircase, arms crossed, her face contorted into a performance of worry, but her foot tapped impatiently, barely noticeable unless someone was looking closely. Unfortunately for her, Daniel was. "What happened?" she asked, voice pitched higher. "Did she fall again? You know she's been unsteady lately, I've told you." Daniel stood slowly, every muscle in his body tight. Where were you? He asked. What do you mean? When this happened? Where were you? Cassandra blinked rapidly. Inside. Upstairs. What are you implying? Oliver growled again, deep and resonant. Cassandra snapped, "Shut that thing up." Daniel stepped between her and the dog. "Don't talk to him like that." His tone made even Cassandra pause. He moved past her toward the trash bin, something catching his eye, paper sticking up from beneath a mess of crumpled napkins. He reached in and pulled it out. A brochure. Willow Orchard Nursing Home. The edges were dog-eared, as if handled often. On the top corner, next to the facility logo, written in Cassandra's neat handwriting, one word. Finally. Daniel stared at it, then slowly lifted his gaze to Cassandra. Her face paled, not with guilt, but with anger at being exposed. That's not what it looks like," she stammered. "Then what is it?" Daniel asked. Cassandra's jaw clenched. Her eyes darted briefly to Margaret, then back to him. "I was just looking, because she's been falling more. Because we can't keep doing this. Because it's too much, Danny." Margaret's voice, thin, almost fading, cut through the tension. "Don't be mad at her. She's hurting too." Daniel knelt beside his mother again. "Mom, she hurt you." Margaret shook her head weakly. "She's troubled. She doesn't mean to." Cassandra looked away, teeth grinding. Daniel touched Margaret's cheek and whispered, "Mom, someone hurt you. I see it, and I'm not letting it happen again." Margaret's eyes widened, filled not with fear but with pleading. A single tear slipped down her wrinkle-softened face. "Danny, please, don't choose between us. I couldn't bear it." For one brief second, Daniel saw it. The fear behind her love. The fear that had kept her silent. The fear that she might lose the only family she had left. And something inside Daniel broke. He whispered, "You're not the one breaking this family, Mom." Her hand tightened around his. She tried to speak again, but pain seized her shoulder, and her breath hitched sharply. Oliver whimpered softly, nudging her fingers with his nose. Daniel turned toward Cassandra, fury rising like a storm tide. "This ends tonight." Cassandra's eyes hardened. Her voice dropped its mask. "What exactly are you accusing me of, Daniel?" He held up her handwritten brochure. "You tell me." Margaret's breathing grew more unsteady. Daniel immediately shifted back to her side, fear overtaking anger. "Mom, stay with me. Stay right here." Her eyes fluttered, but her hand squeezed his one more time. As he held her trembling fingers, something inside him solidified. A truth he could no longer ignore, a promise forming in the quiet between heartbeats. He was going to protect her, no matter what happened next, no matter who stood in the way. And Cassandra, standing stiffly near the stairs, seemed to understand that too. The night had shifted, and nothing in this house would ever be the same again. If this chapter moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform. Because God's miracles often begin in the moments we choose to protect the ones we love. Daniel sat beside his mother on the living room couch long after Cassandra retreated upstairs. Snow beat softly against the windows, dulling the world outside, as though the storm itself was trying to muffle the chaos inside the house. Margaret lay half reclined against a pillow Daniel had propped behind her, wrapped in a thick blanket, her frail body trembling whenever a wave of pain shot through her swollen shoulder. Oliver lay stretched across the rug at her feet, his old golden fur rising and falling steadily, one paw resting gently over her ankle. Daniel had never seen his mother so small, so breakable, so ashamed. She kept her eyes lowered, cheeks damp as she whispered apologies he didn't need. "I should have told you. she murmured. But I didn't want to burden you. He held her hand gently. Mom, you're never a burden. But she only shook her head and closed her eyes, as if the weight she carried was older than him, older than this house, older than her fragile bones. Daniel rose quietly. His instinct screamed to confront Cassandra, but something told him to wait, to take one step at a time. His mother needed him calm. He walked into her bedroom, Oliver's claws clicking softly as the dog followed him. Daniel opened a drawer to find a fresh blanket, and that's when he saw it. A faint outline of something tucked deep under the bed. A small wooden box, worn at the edges, polished by decades of touch. He pulled it out gently. It was old. Really old. Made of dark cherry wood, the kind that fades into a warm brown with time. A delicate carved edge ran around the lid, though the pattern had softened with age. Oliver sniffed it, ears tilting back as if recognizing the scent of history. Daniel hesitated. It felt almost sacred. A box meant to stay closed, unless opened with love. He returned to the living room and sat beside Margaret. Mom, he said softly, placing the box on her lap. What's this? Margaret looked at it and gasped. Her breath caught, her fingers curling instantly around the edges, holding it the way someone holds memory itself. Oh, Danny, I haven't opened this in years. Her voice broke on the word years. Daniel joined her again on the couch. Will you show me? Margaret hesitated. For a second she looked as though she might refuse, but then something inside her unwound. She nodded once, weakly, and lifted the carved lid. Inside lay a handful of worn, precious things. The first, a pair of tiny shoes. Daniel's shoes, the ones he wore at 5 years old. Brown leather, scratched, faded, one lace missing. Margaret touched them as though they might crumble. You disappeared in these, she whispered, the day your father died. Daniel exhaled slowly. He remembered the story, but hearing her say it made it real in a different way. She lifted the next item, a folded pamphlet from St. Mary's Children's Shelter, sun-bleached, a faint water stain along the top edge. I was so lost after he passed, she said, eyes distant. I wasn't thinking clearly. I thought maybe you'd be safer with people who weren't drowning in grief. Daniel froze. You almost gave me up? She winced as though he'd struck her. I didn't. I couldn't. But I went there. I filled out half the form. Then I ran out with you in my arms, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. The pain on her face wasn't new. It was decades old. She lifted the next item, a photograph. A little boy, Daniel, standing outside their old house under pouring rain, arms wrapped around himself, looking lost. Margaret stared at it, long and painfully. I took this the day I realized I wasn't being your mother. I was becoming a ghost in my own home. Daniel couldn't speak. His throat tightened. And this, she whispered, pulling out the last item. A letter, yellowed, creased. Her handwriting, shaky and soft, covered the page. She handed it to him. I wrote it for you when I thought I wasn't going to make it. I kept it in case you grew up without me. Daniel unfolded it carefully. My sweet Danny, if you read this, it means I failed to stay. But I never failed to love you. You were the only thing that kept me alive after your father didn't come home. Please don't grow up thinking you were hard to love. You saved me. Every day. Daniel's vision blurred. He pressed the letter to his forehead, breath shaking as tears fell onto the page. Mom, why didn't you ever show me this? Margaret smiled sadly. because you never needed to carry my sins. I wanted your life to be lighter than mine." He reached for her, pulling her gently into his arms. She leaned against him, her thin fingers curling weakly into the fabric of his jacket. Oliver lifted his head, walked closer, and rested it across Margaret's legs, his old eyes soft as candlelight. For a moment, the house felt still again, not silent like before, but sacred, a space where truth finally breathed. Margaret whispered, her voice trembling, "I let Cassandra treat me the way she did because I thought I deserved it. For almost losing you when you were little, for not being strong enough, for being broken." Daniel leaned back to see her face. "You don't deserve pain. You never did. And what happened tonight, Mom, that wasn't your fault." A tear slipped down her cheek. He wiped it gently. "Nothing you did," he said softly, "could ever make me love you less." Oliver pushed his nose under Margaret's hand until she stroked his head, moving slowly so her injured shoulder wouldn't flare. For a fleeting moment, warmth replaced fear, a kind of healing only honesty can bring. Then, Daniel's phone buzzed violently on the coffee table. Once, twice, 3 times. He frowned and picked it up. Unknown number. He hesitated, something cold threading into his spine, and answered. A woman's voice came through the line, gentle, steady, with a faint Hispanic accent. "Hello? Is this Daniel Ward?" "Yes. Who is this?" "This is Elena Morales," she said. "I'm a nurse aide at Willow Orchard Nursing Home." Daniel's heart stilled. "We need to meet," Elena continued. "It's about your mother." If this moment touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform. Because sometimes God reveals truth when we're finally ready to heal. The morning after the storm broke quietly over Ohio, leaving a heavy white silence draped across rooftops and streets. Inside the Ward home, that same silence felt heavier still. Daniel stood by the window, watching frost gather on the glass, while Margaret slept curled under blankets on the couch. Oliver lay beside her like a sentry, his old golden fur pressed to her legs, his breathing steady, his eyes half open, as if guarding her, even in dreams. Daniel's phone buzzed again. Unknown number, the same number from the night before. He stepped into the hallway so as not to wake Margaret and answered. "This is Daniel." A gentle but firm voice replied, "Mr. Ward? This is Elena Morales. We spoke briefly last night." Her voice was warm, steady with a soft Hispanic lilt, like someone accustomed to calming frightened families. He imagined her as someone young but strong, the kind who carried kindness the way others carried shields. "Yes," Daniel said. "You said it was about my mother." There was a pause, one that felt too long, too careful. "Can you come to Willow Orchard Nursing Home this morning? It's important." Daniel looked toward the living room where Margaret slept. "I'll be there." Willow Orchard sat at the edge of town, a long single-story building with stone walls and wide windows. Snow gathered along the walkway, and the flagpole out front hung limp in the still, cold air. Inside, the lobby was warmly lit, filled with the faint smell of disinfectant mixed with lavender, an attempt at comfort that never fully hid the sterility beneath. A receptionist directed Daniel to a small meeting room. He entered to find a woman waiting for him. Elena Morales rose from her chair. She looked to be in her late 20s, with warm brown eyes framed by long lashes, dark curly hair pulled into a loose bun, and soft tan skin that seemed to glow in the warm light. Her scrubs were a pale blue, and her ID badge shimmered as she moved. "Mr. Ward," she said gently. "I'm glad you came." Daniel nodded, shaking her hand. Her grip was warm, her expression sincere. "Is my mother all right?" he asked. Elena hesitated, her eyes shifting with a weight of something hard to say. "She's safe now," she answered. "But there are things you need to know. Things I should have told you sooner." She motioned for him to sit. Daniel sat slowly, pulse quickening. Elena pulled out a thin folder, white, worn at the edges. "I sent you a letter last month," she said, "but it came back. Return to sender. Someone marked your address as invalid." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Cassandra. What letter?" Elena opened the folder and slid a folded paper across the table. Daniel picked it up. The handwriting wasn't Margaret's. It was neat, professional, and sad. He opened it. "Dear Mr. Ward, I'm writing because your mother waits at the door every day for you, or someone, to come get her. She waits for hours even, in the cold. She tells us she doesn't want to call you because you're busy, and she doesn't want to be a burden. But she misses you deeply. Please visit her when you can." Daniel stared at the letter. For a moment, he forgot how to breathe. His mother, waiting at a door day after day alone. Why hadn't she told him? Why hadn't Cassandra? Elena continued gently. She always sat in the same chair, right by the entrance. She refused to move until the sun went down. Daniel's heart cracked. What did she say? A sad smile touched Elena's lips. She always said, "My boy is busy, but he'll come when he's ready." Daniel swallowed hard, blinking rapidly as tears began to blur his vision. Elena reached into the folder again. "I shouldn't show you this, but I think you deserve to hear it." She slid her phone across the table and tapped play. A recording began. Margaret's weak voice filled the room. "Don't blame my son. Blame me. I wasn't a good enough mother. I should have been stronger. I'm the reason he works so hard. I'm the reason he doesn't come. He deserves better." Daniel covered his mouth with his hand as the words hit him like blows. He had never heard his mother speak like that, not even on her worst days. He looked away, shoulders shaking once. Elena lowered her gaze respectfully, giving him space. "My mother," she said quietly, "died 6 years ago in a nursing home. I visited her every weekend except one. That one weekend, she passed, alone." Her voice faltered. "I promised myself I'd never let another family miss their chance to show up. That's why I sent the letter." Daniel let out a broken breath. "Thank you," he whispered. "You did more for her than I knew." Elena shook her head. "I sent the letter, but someone made sure you didn't get it." Daniel's hands clenched. Cassandra, again, pulling strings in silence. Elena placed a hand lightly over his. Not romantic, not bold, just human. "She loves you very much, Mr. Ward. Everything she did, it wasn't because she didn't trust you. It was because she didn't want to make you choose." Her words echoed like truth Daniel had been afraid to face. He lowered his head, tears falling silently onto the letter. Oliver suddenly stirred from where he lay under the table, lifting his head with a soft whine. His amber eyes fixed on the door, not in fear, but in alertness, as if he sensed someone approaching who didn't belong. Daniel followed the dog's gaze. For a moment, the hallway remained empty. Then a shadow appeared, a familiar silhouette, stiff posture, straight hair. Cassandra, standing in the doorway of the nursing home meeting room. Her cold eyes flicked first to Daniel, then to Elena, then downward to Oliver. She crossed her arms. "So," she said quietly, icily, "you believe her?" Her mouth curled. "You don't know the full story." Daniel rose slowly, not with panic, not with surprise, but with the calm before a storm. If this chapter touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform. Because sometimes God brings truth to light through the people who dare to care. Daniel stood between Cassandra and the small meeting table, shoulders squared, jaw set with a resolve he had not felt in years. The air in the nursing home room tightened, like two storms colliding in a narrow hallway. Elena Morales stepped back respectfully, her warm brown eyes flicking from Daniel to Cassandra, sensing the emotional detonation building behind his stillness. Oliver rose from the floor in a slow, protective motion, his old golden fur bristling, his amber eyes sharp and unblinking as he watched Cassandra with an instinct only animals possess when darkness passes close. Cassandra didn't flinch. She leaned casually against the doorframe, arms folded. Her cream coat hugged her slim frame, her ash-blonde hair perfectly arranged despite the storm outside. Her blue eyes carried a cold brightness, like ice that remembered every wound it ever suffered. "So," she said, her voice low and cutting, "you believe her? The nurse, the letter, the recordings, all of it?" Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "I believe my mother," he said. A flash of something sharp, something jagged, ran through Cassandra's expression. She pushed off the door frame and stepped into the room, her boots tapping against the tile with controlled force. "You want the truth?" she asked. "Fine. You'll get it, but you won't like it." Elena instinctively stepped between Cassandra and the table, protective by nature. But Daniel gently placed a hand on her arm. "It's all right," he murmured. "Let her talk." Cassandra let out a humorless laugh. "You act like I'm a monster," she said. "Like I woke up one day and decided to hate her. But that old woman, she reminded me of someone." She lifted her head slightly, jaw tightening. "My mother." Daniel blinked in surprise. Cassandra almost never mentioned her past. When she did, she buried it in sarcasm or silence. Cassandra continued, voice flattening into memory. "She left when I was 8. Left me with a foster family 2 towns over. The woman who took me in." Her lips trembled once, barely noticeable. "Hit me for everything. The wrong shoes, the wrong tone, the wrong breath." Her fingers dug into her own arms. She'd grab me by the wrist like this. Cassandra reached out suddenly and clamped her own wrist, hard, leaving a faint white mark. "And squeeze until I learned not to cry." Elena covered her mouth softly. Daniel didn't move, but his eyes softened with something like pity. Until Cassandra's next words froze him. "When I met your mother," she said quietly, "I saw her again. The woman who left me, the woman who broke me, and every time she looked at me with those soft, forgiving eyes, I felt this rage." Daniel's breath caught. Cassandra's voice dropped even lower. "I hurt her because she made me remember who hurt me first." The room went silent. Elena took a step back, horror crossing her gentle features. Oliver growled, a low rumble that vibrated under the metal chair Daniel's leg touched. Daniel's face drained, not with fear, but with a grief so heavy it bent his posture. "Cassandra," he said softly, "your trauma explains your pain, not your cruelty." Her lips parted, but no words came. "You didn't see my mother," he continued. "You saw a shadow from your past. You punished her for someone she wasn't." Cassandra swallowed hard. For the first time in days, her hands trembled. "You want me to say, I'm sorry?" she whispered. "But I'm not." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know." Cassandra stepped toward the table where Elena had laid the letter she had stolen, hidden, thrown away. Her fingertips brushed the paper, then withdrew as though it burned her. "I never meant to love you," she said, eyes flickering with something raw. "But I did." and I thought if I could just remove her, you'd finally see me." Elena gasped quietly. Daniel's voice broke. "You thought hurting her would make me love you." Cassandra's shoulders stiffened. She reached for her purse, a structured beige leather bag, gathering the strap in trembling hands. She moved toward the door, pausing only once. She turned to face Daniel. "You won't hear me say this again," she said softly, "but I wish I didn't see my mother when I looked at her." She swallowed, forcing the last words out. "I wish I didn't see the woman who abandoned me when I looked at the woman you love." Daniel's chest tightened. "She's my mother," he whispered. "I know," Cassandra murmured, "and that's why I'm leaving." She opened the door and stepped out into the hallway. Elena exhaled shakily. Oliver sat down at Daniel's feet, nudging his hand. The storm inside Daniel didn't quiet. It sharpened, because Cassandra wasn't the one he cared about right now. There was someone else. Someone who had spent a lifetime believing she wasn't worth protecting. Daniel returned home with Elena's letter in his jacket pocket. The house was quiet when he entered. Too quiet. Margaret sat on the couch, the blanket pulled up to her chest. Her face brightened slightly at the sight of him, then dimmed with worry. "Danny?" she whispered. "Where's Cassandra?" Daniel knelt in front of her. "She left." Margaret's breath caught. Her frail fingers tightened around the blanket. Did she leave because of me?" The question sliced through him. Her voice wasn't accusing. It was afraid. Afraid she had broken something again. Afraid she had ruined his life simply by existing. Daniel reached for her hand, holding it firmly. "Mom," he said, voice thick with emotion, "she left because of herself, not because of you." Margaret's eyes filled. Oliver climbed onto the couch, laying his head gently in her lap. Margaret stroked his fur with trembling fingers as Daniel rested, his forehead against her knee. Outside, snow began to fall again. Quiet, steady, almost mournful. But inside the home, a different kind of healing had begun. If this chapter touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform, because God often turns broken moments into the beginnings of healing. Daniel carried the last of the boxes into the small apartment just as the afternoon sun slipped into a soft gold haze. The place was modest. Warm beige walls, soft lamps, a tiny balcony that overlooked the quiet street. But it felt safe. It felt peaceful. More importantly, it felt like somewhere his mother could breathe again. Margaret stood near the doorway, wrapped in her thick winter cardigan. Her silver hair, still slightly messy from the emotional days prior, gleamed in the golden light. Her frame looked fragile, but her eyes, blue, gentle, lined with age, held a new calm he hadn't seen in years. "This is beautiful," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "It's not much, but it's ours." Oliver trotted in behind him, tail sweeping slowly from side to side. The old golden retriever sniffed every corner, circling the living room with deliberate care before sitting on the rug like he was planting a flag in new territory. His fur, grayer now around the muzzle, shimmered under the lamp, and his warm eyes watched Margaret with devotion. Daniel hung coats, set the kettle to boil, and lit a small cinnamon candle on the counter. The flame flickered softly, filling the apartment with the scent of winter and warmth. Margaret sat on the couch, exhaling a long, trembling breath. "I can't believe you took leave from work for me." "I didn't take leave for you," Daniel said, settling beside her. "I took leave because I should have been here a long time ago." Margaret looked down at her hands. Thin, veined, still faintly bruised, I didn't want to pull you away from your life." "You didn't," he murmured. "You reminded me what my life actually is." He brought her a mug of steaming hot chocolate, just the way she liked it, with 2 marshmallows melting in the center. She held it between both palms, savoring the warmth. "I used to make this for you after school," she said softly. "You'd come in with snow on your eyelashes, complaining about cold fingers." Daniel chuckled. "I still remember you warming my mittens on the radiator before I left for the bus." "That's because you always forgot to dry them the night before," she teased. He took a sip of his cocoa and leaned back. Outside, snow began to drift again. Soft, steady, like a lullaby falling from the sky. Margaret gazed at it with the kind of smile that only arrives after surviving something dark. Her hand reached out, searching, and Daniel placed his hand gently over hers. For a long, peaceful stretch, they sat in silence. Just a mother, a son, and the quiet presence of a loyal old dog curled at their feet. A few hours later, while Daniel unpacked, Margaret wandered slowly through the apartment. She touched the bookshelf, the soft blanket, the framed photo of Daniel as a child. Every detail felt intentional, chosen with love. She paused by the balcony. Outside, the world glowed under the amber lights of evening. A few families walked by bundled in coats. Someone down the street shoveled snow. A little girl carried a sled twice her size. Something inside Margaret loosened. For the first time in years, she did not feel like someone waiting to be included. She felt like she was home. Oliver joined her by the balcony door, leaning gently against her knee. She stroked his head, feeling the warmth and weight of him, the soft puff of his breath against her leg. "You saved me, sweet boy," she whispered. Oliver's tail thumped against the floor, slow, steady, full of understanding. Later that night, Daniel returned to the couch and sat beside his mother. He held something in his hands, a folded blanket from her old home, washed and neatly tucked under his arm. "I want to say something," he said. Margaret turned to him, her face framed by the glow of the lamp. "I spent my whole life running toward something," Daniel continued. "Work, responsibility, missions, cases, everything that felt urgent." He swallowed. "And you spent your whole life waiting for me." Margaret blinked, her lips parting with surprise. Daniel took her hand, squeezing gently. "So now," he said softly, "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never wait alone again." Margaret's eyes glistened. Tears slipped down her cheeks, soft and quiet. "Oh, Danny." She leaned forward, resting her forehead gently against his shoulder. "I don't need a big house," she whispered. "I don't need fancy things. I just want a place where someone is happy I'm here." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "I'm happy you're here," he murmured. "More than I can ever say." Oliver shifted, letting out a tired sigh before curling tighter against Margaret's legs like a warm, loyal guardian. His tail flicked once before settling. As the three sat quietly, a soft knock echoed from the balcony glass. Margaret gasped. A single red cardinal perched on the railing, vibrant against the snow, feathers puffed, head tilted. Cardinals were rare in winter storms. Margaret whispered, "Your father used to say cardinals appear when loved ones are near." Daniel looked at her. She looked at him. Oliver lifted his head, ears pricked, as if he too sensed the meaning. The bird stayed for a long, steady heartbeat. Then it fluttered away into the glowing night. Margaret squeezed Daniel's hand. "I think God's telling us. It's time to rest." Daniel nodded, throat thick. Their new life, quiet, safe, whole, had just begun. Later, the apartment window glowed with warm golden light against the snowy darkness outside. Inside, Margaret slept peacefully beneath a soft blanket. Oliver lay curled at her feet, guarding her dreams. Daniel stood by the balcony door, watching snow drift gently across the street. No waiting, no silence, no loneliness. Just a mother, a son, and a dog. Together, in a home where love finally had space to breathe. And for the first time in years, no one had to wait for anyone anymore. If this story touched you, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform. Because God still works miracles in the quiet places where families choose each other again. Sometimes the greatest miracles are not loud or dramatic. They appear quietly, in the small choices we make to love one another, to protect family, to forgive, to return home when we've wandered too far. God often works through ordinary days, through the hands we hold, through the people who stay, and through the strength He plants in us when we think we have none left. If this story touched you, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and pass this story to someone who may need a reminder that they are not alone. May God bless you, guide your steps, and place His protection over everyone who listens.